Hi, I'm Yinka, and this is The Hurt Locker, a podcast where we open a door into men's mental health. Coming up, one part of the farm.
We are the last gang in town, you know what I mean? I can certainly tell you that. There's been some challenges along the way. But my dad got blacklisted, which had a massive impact upon us as a family. I did struggle in school, but there's reasons for that.
Was there a fear?
And so I kind of spent a lot of my life thinking I'm stupid. I'm now what you would call an academic.
How was that for you?
It was quite, it's quite emotional, really. You learn to hide stuff. What you felt was the shame.
You're listening to The Hurt Locker, the podcast that opens the door on men's mental health. And tonight's guest, we have one part of the farm, Keith Mullin. Keith, welcome.
Hello, Yinka. Thank you very much for inviting me on, and it's a pleasure to be here. I hope you're well, and it's all good, man.
So basically, The Hurt Locker is, as I said it before we started recording, it's just about having an honest and open discussion about our own mental health and all of that, you know?
Yeah.
We won't get you to talk about anything you don't want to talk about, you know?
Okay.
But just how life's been for you growing up, being a musician, coming from Liverpool, etc., etc. What's your trials and tribulations, okay?
Yeah. I mean, I've got no problem with that. I'll be as open as I can be, you know?
Yeah. So, Keith, welcome. Yeah. How's your day been? Have you finished gigging this summer or...?
We've got quite a bit to go yet, you know. We're kind of halfway through a lot of the gigs that we're doing this year. We've got quite a bit to come, to be fair, you know. So we've just done a fantastic show down by Ipswich called Smile Fest, you know, and we've just been doing quite a few festivals. We've got some local shows coming up. Liverpool, we're doing Salt and Tar with Red Rum Club in a few weeks. And we've got more festivals coming up and different types of shows coming before the end of the year. So in terms of our year, in terms of what we've been doing this year, it's been really busy, you know. Been really busy.
I mean, how long, as a band, how long has the farm been going for? You're smiling there.
So, all our lives, really. It's quite I suppose quite an achievement when I think about it. You know, I mean, when you think about that, we've all been able to be in a band together and make music together for over 30 years. Really, that's what we're looking at now. Which is, you know, the farm began in the early 80s with Peter and Steve. You know, before I joined the farm, I didn't join the farm till about 85. It had already restarted, and you know, we were very much an independent band who were doing things ourselves for many years before we had the success that we had. And we had the success that we had all on our own label by doing it ourselves, because no one really wanted to sign a band like us. And to be still doing it all these years later and recently releasing music and signing a new record deal to Modern Sky, which we've done this year because of the singles we put out over the last 18 months, is I suppose really an achievement for us, and it's, you know, it's an honour really that we can still do that and still go and play, and people still are into our music, you know. I mean, we played Glastonbury the other week, and that's the first time we've ever played it, and the gig was amazing, you know, and so I feel very, very fortunate really as an artist and as a musician to be able to still do it and be with some people, a group of people that I've been able to spend my life with, you know, and you know, the ups and downs as well, you know, of all of that's not all been plain sailing. I can certainly tell you that there's been some challenges along the way, you know.
I'm sure. Yeah. But playing Glastonbury, I'm surprised that's the first time you've ever played there.
Yeah, we were asked back in the day, I think around 1990 or 91, I think we were asked to play it. But we were touring in America at the time, and we couldn't make it back to do it. So we had to politely decline, you know, and we never got asked back.
Okay. What, they took umbrage with that then, yeah?
No, I don't think they did. I just think over a period of time, our time had passed, you know, and And we kind of called it a day, really, around about 1995, 96. We never necessarily split up. We just kind of went home, because we'd been away from our homes for kind of a while. And then we got back together in 2005, just purely to play live and because we enjoyed being together and people wanted to hear us again, So I think because of that, we weren't necessarily on the radar. But I think because of our activities over recent years, we've got back on the radar as well, which is fantastic for us, especially at that age.
Okay. I mean, age aside and all of that, what has been the USP to the band staying together for more than 30 years? What's bound you together?
I suppose many things, really. One being music, two, our outlook on life. I suppose ideology. I suppose the fact our backgrounds, that we're all from this city and we're all fairly grounded as people. The farm, the good thing about the farm I've always found is everyone in the farm has been successful at something else outside of the farm. So,
give me examples.
Well, I work in Liverpool,
I know that, yeah.
I'm now what you would call an academic. You'd have asked this young man from North End of Liverpool who struggled in school, basically. I did struggle in school, but there's reasons for that. I struggled with that side of life and always have, but I ended up working in Liverpool and teaching in Liverpool and doing a master's and they kind of taught me a lot there. They really, really believed in me and taught me a lot. And so I do that. Roy is a filmmaker and he's a producer and makes films, big films. Carl Hunter's a director and directs, feature films. Peter's a book writer, documentary maker. Steve writes dance music for different artists and stuff like that. And I write music as well for different people. And so we're all kind of independent outside of the band. And I think that's really important. We've got our own interests and our own lives outside of the band. We're not necessarily completely dependent upon the band for our ego, two, our finances, and three, the ego thing's important.
The ego's massively important.
Absolutely, people don't realise that. So I think it's. I think that plays a major role in it. And also, we never really fell out with each other. A lot of bands fall out. They spend a lot of time not liking each other, And some bands allow that to get in the way. But I just think because of our mindset and our outlook and view on life and ultimately where we're from, we're all primarily from working class backgrounds. And that doesn't necessarily make you immune to that. But I just feel that coming out at the time that we came out in the 80s, we were kind of quite politically motivated. And so there always felt like there was a higher purpose and there was something else that we were doing this for rather than just ourselves. So I feel that's played a major factor and that we just get on. Yeah. I mean, we do actually get on. We enjoy being in the van together. We enjoy the days out. We enjoy other company and we're very, very fortunate as people to be here all these years later, just having a laugh together as the last gang in town,
Do you still have a laugh together?
My dogs. I do apologise about that interruption.
No, you don't have to, but just for the purpose of listeners, I can assure you they're not XL bullies anyway, Definitely
not. My wife rescues chihuahuas.
Okay.
Seriously, you see, I take chihuahuas to gigs with me now and then, so I am the man in the hat and the suit with 2 chihuahuas, I'm okay with my masculinity, you know what I mean? I don't need a hard dog.
Absolutely. Anyway, what I was going to ask was, you've already alluded to it. Let me just pick up on one point. You're an academic now, like I say.
Yes. Yeah.
You're in Liverpool and all that. You've done your masters, etc. I don't know if you'll do a PhD, etc.
I'm looking at doing it at the moment.
Oh, we are. There you go. The question I'm going to ask is this. Looking back now at education, going to school, primary school, secondary school, is there an element of resentment or, say, bitterness in the way that you were taught then?
Not resentment or bitterness. Kind of, I suppose there's some things I perhaps wish I'd known back then that I know now. It would probably kind of help the young me understand me a little bit better, you know. And you know, I'm dyslexic. I've got touches of dyspraxia. My children are all got ADHD. You know, my daughter's ADHD, my wife's ADHD, and I've been told that I need to get tested for it. You know, you know, I have a twitch that I've had all my life. That when I get stressed, I twitch, and there's just loads of things that kind of, I suppose, I wish I'd known back then, you know, but back then in the 70s when I was in school, 60s and 70s, and you know, no one knew about these things that people have now. Do you know what I mean? That are conditions that people have. I mean, back then, I mean, I was a slow reader, you know. It took me a while to learn how to read. I didn't know why. I was just told it was stupid, you know. And I can remember distinctly being in a class with a teacher called Miss Gardner. I remember the name, and I remember I was about 5 years of age. And I remember not being able to completely follow. But you have to go out, that time you have to go out at the front of the class and read, you know, read from a book.
Yeah.
And it was part of the English class, you know, learn English and go out and read the book, you know. And I remember not being able to completely follow the story or read as well as everybody else. And that the words move on the page, and the way I read, sometimes I'll read and I'll completely forget what I've read within, you know, a minute or two, and I have to go back and read it again, you know. And that was deemed stupid, but I remember what I used to do was just make it up. So I was a bit of an improviser. So I'd start out on the story, and then once I kind of lost track, I just start throwing shit in there and start making stuff up with the story. And it would take them at least 30 seconds to a minute to kind of work out what the fuck hell's he reading. Do you know what I mean? But I used to get smacked for it. I used to get hit. You know what I mean? So I remember distinctly getting like badly, you know, like just whacked on the back of the legs. Then were the days when you wore shorts and they'd whack you on the back of the legs. You know what I mean? To make it sting, you know. And I couldn't tell the time till I was 10 years of age. Oh, my auntie and uncle, who spent days with me showing me how to tell the time and what it meant. With the slow reading thing and all that. So I was deemed as a kind of a late developer. That's what I was dubbed, and that's how I was classified. And so I kind of spent a lot of my life thinking I'm stupid. You know, I must be. You know, or I'm not as bright as everyone else. You know, I have a problem with spelling. I have things, but I have mechanisms in place now to deal with all of this. So it's kind of like I've kind of had that all my life. So to be in the position I'm in right now, and to have done and achieved the things that I've done, I feel extremely proud of myself. One, but I kind of feel a little bit vindicated in a way, and. So really the school, I don't really hate it. It's just the system at the time. It's just the way it was. You know, if you read all my school reports, and I've had to do that recently for these tests that I'm getting.
How was that for you?
It was quite, you know, it's quite emotional really, you know, because all of my reports are, Keith's a lovely lad. He's just lives in a world of his own, basically. Is all of my reports say the same thing. He's a daydreamer and he lives in a world of his own. Which is classic signs of certain learning difficulties. When you read my school report, it's classic sign of you know, I twitch a lot, I shake my knee a lot, and all these things I just thought everyone did, you know, but they don't. You know what I mean? We're classic signs of things. But what I'd learned through my life is not to say and not to tell people things. You learn to hide stuff.
You learn to mask it, don't you?
You learn to mask it, you learn to hide it, and you learn to respond. I know my natural reaction was to go on the attack. Sometimes I'd respond aggressively.
Yeah.
to mask it or to shy away from it. I'm terrible at tests and things like that, so I would play up not to do them, So it was rather than suffer what you felt was the shame of not being as clever as everyone else,
Yeah.
And I've been very conscious of that all my life.
As an academic, then, as a lecturer in LIPA, if you come across musicians, whomever, students struggling, how are you towards them now? I'm sure you can pick up the telltale signs.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, but I also kind of talk to them about it's okay. Do you know what I mean? It's okay, the mechanism, things that you can do. It doesn't mean, sometimes not immediately understanding something or not grabbing a concept of something doesn't necessarily mean you're stupid. It just means you don't understand at that particular point, and there's other ways to learn. There's other ways to learn. We do that a lot in Liverpool, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, is the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts.
Thank you. You got there before me.
So really, yeah, that's my memories of school, and I couldn't wait to leave. I couldn't wait to get out of it. Couldn't wait to leave. But then when I did leave, I've had fond memories of it all my life. I'm sure it must be an age thing. You get to a certain age and you have very, very powerful and strong memories of certain people and certain things of you doing at a certain age. Maybe it's dewy-eyed nostalgia or, just a romantic kind of perception that you have of the past. But I've got wonderful memories from it, but I just wish there was certain things I'd known or, I'd maybe not avoided as much as what I avoided in life for fear of being found out. I've always had that thing, I'm going to be found out at some point. My auntie, who was an English teacher, rest in peace, she had to spend quite a bit of time teaching me how to write because she couldn't understand me handwriting. Do you know what I mean? I still got appalling handwriting.
They might write like a doctor, so like, yeah.
But I've learned a way to communicate, and I communicate academically. I kind of learned that I can do it. I just have to go through a slightly different process than everyone else in order to be able to do it.
I think for me, what's always interesting is we've had the same educational system whereby there's 3 ways of teaching, even though there's 9 to 10 different learning styles.
Yeah.
There's only 3 ways that schools purport to dole out. And I think that's why a lot of children are turned off by education.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't grip them in the way that it should. Education's fascinating. Learning's fascinating.
Yeah. Knowledge is everything.
Knowledge is wealth.
Yeah, it's absolutely everything. Knowledge and understanding and, being able to express yourself and education is everything. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. Make it a better place.
During that period in school, etc., was there a fear? A dormant fear, as it were?
Yeah, I used to hate the annual tests that you'd go through, because I never performed well in them. I was never a great person at doing an English test or a maths test. It's not that I'm not good at it, it's just I just don't perform well sometimes in those situations. So there was a fear of that. I loved the social aspect of school with my mates, and I was always the person, if someone said, Keith, go and do that, I'd be the person doing it. I was always the prankster. I was always the person that, it'd be me that would get himself into trouble. My mother always used to say that, you're not a bad person, but someone says, Keith, go and do that, you're normally the person doing it, because I was very suggestive. Do you know what I mean? I was always the person that was, playing practical jokes, and it was just playing up. You know what I mean? It was just, I would try and express myself in very, very different ways. So I wasn't a bad kid, but I was just what you would call probably a little bit of a character, I suppose.
I
remember when I was young, they tried to get me into. When I was in senior school, and I'd just gone to senior school, and we were doing an annual show of Oliver, right? And it really wasn't cool in the school I was in to be into acting or music. You know what I mean?
What school was it?
I went to a school called Chesterfield High School, which was the fair in the north end of Liverpool, which is in Waterloo. And it was in Waterloo at that time, right? And it was like, it really was like Cares, you know what I mean? It really was. It was when all the kids that didn't make it to grammar school went there, you know what I mean? And it was very much like that. And I remember distinctly the arts, I think the acting tutor, it must have been a teacher, seeing something in me and saying she wanted me to be the Artful Dodger.
That's the role I had. That's the role that came into my head straight away.
And I got that much stick. You know what I mean? I avoided it. And she was like, come on, it'll be all right. And everyone was saying it'll be all right. But all my mates, but from peer pressure, I didn't do it.
Yes.
It was the peer pressure that put me off. And it's things like that. I was thinking, you know, it was only later in life I stopped letting that type of thing affect me. You know what I mean? And that because you felt like you were inadequate, I suppose, in other areas of your life, you wanted to prove yourself in other ways, you know. That's kind of how I rationalise it now. And I do look back and think, well, maybe I should have done that. You know what I mean? It might not have made an amazing difference to my life. But I suppose as I've got older, I haven't go with anything now. You know?
Yeah, it's those missed opportunities, as I was saying. Tell me a little bit about home life. Who lived at home? Who did you live with growing up? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah. My sister, my brother, my mum, my dad. You know, we lived at home. My dad spent a lot of time unemployed. You know, my dad was a building worker. He was in part of the building worker strikes in the 70s. He was a major part of the building worker strikes in the 1970s with Ricky Thomason and Desi Warren and all the Shrewsbury people that went to jail. He was part of that strike.
Is that where your political knowledge was influenced by?
I was educated on CND marches, you know. That's where I was educated there politically, you know. I was verbally taught Trotsky and Marx and Lenin. Why my dad reading to me, you know. I didn't get bedtime stories. We got that, you know. But my dad got blacklisted basically because of his actions. So he spent a significant amount of time in the late 70s through to 80s unemployed or unemployable because he could not get a job in the building trade.
For the purpose of listeners who don't know what it means to be blacklisted, can you explain that, please?
A blacklisting really means when you have a group of employers who kind of get together and will list anyone who's in a trade union or part of the trade union movement who's in some way raised issues or fought for workers' rights or fought for gone on strike, and they will put you on a particular list which goes round all of the building companies, which the building companies can access, and you basically are blacklisted from employment. So, you know, and when you go for an interview for a job and your name's on that list, you give your name in, they will check the list. It was illegal, completely illegal, but they're only finding out all of these years later that it's true and it actually exists. That there was a list, and he was blacklisted. He could not get a job to save his life in the building trade because of those strikes in the 70s, which had a massive impact upon us as a family.
Economically, financially, We had
nothing, literally nothing, you know. I lived on hand-me-downs most of my early years, and so did my sister, and so did my brother. We were happy. You know, we were very, very happy. So the work that my dad was getting was on the black market. You know, he was, you know, knock cards in, as they'd say, and had brought its own risks and its own trials and tribulations with it, you know, and brought its own things. So you could be sacked at the drop of a hat. You know, what you were doing was not necessarily legal, you know, and so it was times were hard in that, but they were also. I've got lots of fond memories, you know, of all of that. I don't necessarily sit there and complain about that because it made me the person I am. You know, it taught me so much, and it made me value a lot of things that I might not otherwise have valued. Who knows? I don't know, but it kind of made me value. You know, it gave me a work ethic. It certainly gave me that. I didn't want to be in that position ever again. You know, didn't want to necessarily do that. I still have my beliefs. I'm still a trade. My beliefs in trade unions and the trade union movements, and still have those socialist principles. But it kind of made me a bit more of a rebel, I suppose, and more fight for people's rights, and kind of made me realise that the gross inequalities that exist in life for people, and how tough things can get, and how tough things can be. So, it kind of made me a bit more of a conscientious, I suppose, of that, and not to take things for granted, you know.
Yeah. Would that mean that the way that you would operate, you'd be, instead of being direct and in your face, you'd be thinking more circumspect, more cerebral in terms of how to approach this?
A bit more strategic at times, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
But, you know, there's sometimes in my life when I've just thrown myself straight in, you know. Sometimes I'll just go straight for it, you know. I'm very kind of forward, you know what I mean? And I think that's part of my condition. I will just say things sometimes, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's not necessarily the right thing to say. I've been guilty of that a lot in my life, where I'll just come out with stuff, you know what I mean? And people, you know, even in the band, they've kind of said, don't give him the microphone. Do you know what I mean? Because I will just fucking come out with stuff. Do you know what I mean? Not nasty and horrible. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I've been known to do that. And it's just not always gone in my favour, you know?
I hear you. Tell me about your relationship with your siblings, your brother, your sister. He's close?
We still talk a lot now, you know what I mean? I was with my sister at the weekend because it was her birthday. So we talk a lot about those times, you know, the great things about those times, you know. So yeah, I've got a great relationship. My sister left home, got married. My brother kind of left and got married. You know, we all kind of me and my brother were politicised together. We were in various political parties when we were young. We were quite rebellious. So we're part of that kind of youth culture movement of the 80s, which was going to football matches and gigs and, do you know what I mean, and music. And it was all very much, you know, part of your culture then. There was only, 4 channels on the TV then, you know what I mean? That was kind of all you had, you know. You didn't have much else. You had the football, you had the music, and you had fashion. That was it, you know.
Yeah.
You didn't have, you know, computer games or any of that stuff. I mean, I think the first computer game we ever got was that little tennis thing, you know.
Yes.
I don't remember what it was called. We were fascinated by it, you know.
And what about, I don't know about your parents. Are they still alive?
No, my mum passed away last year and my dad passed away during COVID. You know?
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. My mum passed away quite quickly, really, last year. She was diagnosed. We thought she'd had a stroke, but she had a tumour in a sinus, which goes underneath your brain. So she went into the hospital and she never came out, you know. So it killed her within 5 weeks. So that was quite traumatic, you know.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's something I've dealt with now, you know what I mean? It's kind of, I suppose it's what we all have to go through in life, you know, and we all have those things, but they've both passed away now, you know, and it's, you know, I miss them, and I'm grateful for the things they did for me in life, and I'm grateful for the things that they taught me in life, you know, especially my mum. I wouldn't be the person I am without my mum, you know. She was such a rock for me, you know, growing up.
In what ways?
She was just always there, no matter what I'd done, you know, no matter how I was feeling. My mum was always the person I could go to and talk to if I was feeling down. My mum was always the person I could share things with, you know. My dad, not so much. He was a little bit, you know, I kind of, my dad split with my mum and had another family, really, you know. So we never kind of spoke for, not for any reason that we fell out. We kind of didn't, but we kind of, towards the end of his life, we drifted apart a little bit, which I regret, you know, but that's just the way things are. I suppose that's just the way it's supposed to be, you know.
Was your mum affectionate to you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Would she tell you that she loved you?
She would, yeah. But Dad didn't.
Okay. That's where I was leading to as well.
He'd tell me that on a rare occasion, but I hate to say this, I really hate to say it, but I kind of never quite, I always felt embarrassed by it. Do you know what I mean?
Personally, yeah.
Yeah, and I was not embarrassed. Probably embarrassed is the wrong word. I always felt uncomfortable with it. It was like we never had that kind of relationship where, or I never felt we had that relationship. Or maybe I just struggle with that type of thing, you know. I'll go, oh yeah, I love you too, Mum, and then want to move on with the conversation. Where you slap each other's arm and be men. You know?
Yeah. And I suppose in the 60s and 70s, there was an expectation of how to behave and not show that emotional side. I know you said before about being relax with your own sexuality and all of that.
Yeah.
But showing signs of affection seemed, growing up in Liverpool particularly, to be a difficult thing to do during those hard times. And they were bleak times during the 60s, 70s and 80s.
You look at Liverpool now, it's kind of nothing compared to, you look at it, well, back then it was desolate. He's desolate. He was at war with the government,
Absolutely.
The highest youth and unemployment in the, it was the most deprived place in Europe. It was desolate, and there was thousands of people, who were unemployed. There was companies going out of business on a weekly basis, 8,000 people being made redundant. Those types of figures banded around all the time. And ultimately, I mean, as much as those, I love my dad. I did, you know what I mean? I'm very affectionate towards him, and I kind of wish some things had turned out slightly different. But I'm sure I know he loved me. Do you know what I mean? It's just sometimes circumstances don't allow you to suppose kind of share that moment. That you maybe think you should have.
Yeah. Do you ever think about going through those challenging times in the city? Why you never left?
I did leave. I only left temporarily. I left when towards the end of the 80s, when it was getting hard to really survive. I along with many other Scousers kind of went down to Devon and places like that
that's nice.
To try and find work. So we kind of moved from Liverpool. We're all like 17, 18, 19. I think we were. I was 19 or 20. Something like that, and we were all still unemployed. We had been for like 3 or 4 years, but it felt like an eternity then, and there wasn't a work in Liverpool. There just wasn't. You couldn't get a job. So we all went down to Torquay and Devon and all went signed on there. We thought we may as well be somewhere nice, and stayed in bed and breakfasts, and people got jobs in kitchens and as things. I got a job with a mate of mine called Shillo. And we got a job in Pontons, we were dishwashers. I got a job doing
KPs, yeah.
We were doing that, and you know what? We had probably had one of the best summers of my life there. It was just a load of fun, watching all them blue coats, what I mean? Which we used to just think were knobheads, you know what I mean? But I remember I had my guitar, and I was playing guitar. I remember the entertainment officer, I think his name, I can't remember his name, comes, "You're not bad on the guitar," He said, if you keep practicing, you might be able to be a blue coat one day.
Of course, yes.
You made it, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Look at me, Ma.
Yeah, and the thought of it, for some reason, just horrified me. And I had one of the moments where the whole world just comes sunken down into me. I'm just thinking, fucking hell, I'm going to be a blue coat. I'm going to get out of here. I remember the season finished. And I mean, this is how impulsive I am. The season had finished, and the supervisor who we worked for said, "Look, I'm going over to Newquay. I've got us all a job. You're not unemployed. Going over to Newquay, and we're all going to work on a camp there for the winter season. It's going to be great." And everyone was made up. Oh, brilliant. So I'm thinking, oh, yeah, this is great. And I'm thinking, I'm on the way over there. There was just something in me niggling. And I think it was that comment, "You're going to be a blue coat one day." I mean, I remember getting there to Newquay, and I was there. We'd gone out for a pint, and we met the people who were working with the day, and they pointed over and said, "That's the kitchen you're working in over there," and pointed at this little kitchen. And I was looking around there going, and I just said to the lad who driven us, said, "Driving the motorway now." And he went, "What?" I said, I'm not staying, I'm going home. And he was like, "What, we've only got here, Keith?" He said, "We're starting work tomorrow morning, we've all got a job." And I said, "Just driving the motorway now, I'm going to go home." And it was that quick. So I went back to the place where we dropped our bags off. Everyone's like, "You're mad." I said, "I'm just going home." I was more into my music. I wanted to do other things. And so I just got him to drive me to the nearest motorway junction. I started hitchhiking home.
Fair play.
And I got home at 9 o'clock the following day, knocked on the door. My mum cried her eyes out when I come in. She was like, "What are you doing home? I thought you had a job. I thought you were set for life." I was like, "Not a Butlins, mate." You know what I mean? So I decided to come home and look for different types of employment. I actually wanted to learn a bit more about music, and I'd made that decision and choice then that this type of life, working in kitchens and working on the hod for building workers and doing labouring and all that, wasn't making me happy, and it wasn't for me. And I needed to, if I wanted to do something else and be something else with my life, that I needed to do something about that, you know.
How old were you then?
I think I would have been about 19 or 20.
Fair play to you.
A year or so later, I got myself into Mabel Fletcher's College.
Mabel Fletcher College. Wow. Sandown Lane.
Yeah,
wow.
I got myself in there, you know, on the propellency course in light music. And so I learned so much there. I learned more about discipline there. I learned about this was a feasible option and that you weren't thick. I learned so much off these people, you know what I mean? And it kind of began to set me up for the rest of my life, really. I not long after that, I joined the farm. You know?
Okay, so how old were you when you joined the farm?
I must have been mid-20s at that point, you know.
Okay. And how was that for you?
It was great because, you know, I got introduced to Peter, or Peter was introduced to me via the lads, some two lads I knew from Waterloo and around that part of the world. But that used to go to football. They were Everton lads, do you know what I mean? They were known for going to football, and they knew all the Liverpool lads. Peter being a cop, and he rode it, I think, at that stage, and us being park enders, I suppose. And we were, and they knew each other. Although at that particular time, all the Everton kind of park enders were in the enclosure, as I remember. They weren't in the park end at that point because the park end had been, part of it had been shut down or had a wall built on it. But we were there, and the guitarist had left the farm, and Peter was looking for the farm, and Billy Dunn, I think it was, and Peter Dunn turned around to Peter and said, "There's a lad by ours who plays guitar. He's pretty good, and he looks the part." Is what he said to them. So,
to be fair, there is a look, isn't there, about the farm?
Yeah. Well, you know, if you think about the look that we had back then, we looked like people and dressed like people that went to football matches of a particular type.
Yeah.
Now everyone dresses like that nowadays.
Nowadays, you do.
Back then, they weren't. Back then, it was like, you know, you were lucky to have 500 people in the city that dressed like that. So it was a subculture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was, and so really, what people know now as casual, even though it wasn't called casual in the initial days back then, it was rare. It wasn't as omnipresent, I suppose, as it is now. It wasn't as over, you know, as prominent as what it is now. It was rare. And so in their eyes, I looked the part. You know, I had my Levi's or lowest jeans and my Adidas Samba and my Fred Perry's, and, you know, that type of thing, and that type of kind of casual look, which seems bizarre and normal for everyone now, but no one dressed like that back then.
No,
and especially in bands, no one dressed in bands like that in the 80s. Everyone looked like, you know, Kajagoogoo back in the 80s in bands, you know, with wild and big hair and very flamboyant kind of jackets with huge shoulders. You know what I mean? And we just looked the complete opposite to that, you know.
So how soon after joining did the success hit you?
Well, it didn't hit us for quite a few years. I mean, I joined the farm when they were signed to an independent record label, and they were doing indies, and they were kind of, John Peel had discovered them, you know, and found out who they were. So I kind of joined a band that was already had already made some noise. There was a lot expected of it, but that lot never really happened until a few years later when I think people had almost forgotten about the farm when we started to kind of do well. You know, we'd started to listen to different types and styles of music. And we're at the end of the 80s at that point, and acid house is happening. Yeah. You know, and if the people that were running all of the events and running those types of things were people that went to football matches, you know. So it was, you know, the people that were all those party kind of goers and all those kind of people were all those people that were part of the the music for fashion and football kind of culture. So the acid house movement really had begun, and so we were listening to that type of music, and it was impacting upon us. And so it kind of, we asked Kevin Sampson at the time, who used to be the Farmers manager.
Away days, yes.
Away days, to remanage the band, so which he did, and we got a little bit of money from a friend of ours. And we set up our own record label, really, and went about it like that, under the guidance of Kevin Sampson and Suggs McPherson. And they made links with us with the likes of Terry Farley, which are now known as Junior Boys Own, which is the Andy Weatheralls, and all of those of the world. And we started working with them, and we went out to Ibiza in 1990 and did the first ever documentary of what was taking place in Ibiza. It's called A Short Film About Chilling, and it's now a cult movie, really. It's the first ever documentary that was made of what was taking place in terms of the dance culture in Ibiza, and we went out there and made that. And that, and amongst a lot of other kind of things that were taking place at the time, is really what kick-started it for us, And it was very much in the... we were, I suppose, Peter will say, and Peter will tell you, we were kind of following a blueprint that we thought the Clash had, or Tony Wilson had had, if you like, that kind of concept and idea of independence, and we were very much, influenced by bands like called Big Audio Dynamite, well as all of that. So you got all of that mixed into what we did, and it came out the way that it came out, and they say timing is everything, and we kind of, I suppose, in this game, and if you think about it in that respect, it was, but went completely nuts, because we're in a complete independent label, learning how to do it, distributing the music through independent distributors, independent pluggers, independent press agents, and we're getting #1 albums. And it was just unthinkable of anyone independent to be able to do that. And we'd only had the record label a year, and we're getting, top 10 singles and #1 albums, and all of that type of things going on. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, really. It was a bit wild. We went from having nothing to having everything.
How did you cope with that?
Not very well.
Well, I'm going to talk about egos. Tony Montana springs to mind.
It's Tony's an interesting character, yeah. No, you kind of like it's. We worked really hard. We worked really, really hard, and we played hard as well. We partied hard. We were coming through acid house culture, which was largely about partying. And it wasn't about a spiritual experience with the music. It wasn't just about hedonism, how people kind of view it now. It was about music meaning something else. We were going to raves and going to dances where you would have all kinds of different opposing football firms all on the dance floor, hugging each other, telling each other they love each other.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
It did not matter.
It didn't matter. It broke down barriers. It broke 100%. Down barriers, culturally, 100%. Kind of spiritually, ethically, or even kind of like, all that tribalism amongst people went out the window. And so it wasn't just about like a hedonistic wild time. It was about a belief in doing something that you thought was worthwhile. The music was experimental. It was a movement in our eyes, and it was anti-establishment in our eyes, because we weren't linked to anyone. We would regularly be getting offered millions of pounds by kind of people to sign to them, and we just laugh at them. It was. I mean, literally, we'd be getting offered ridiculous amounts of money to stop what we're doing and go elsewhere. We eventually did, mind, but because they kind of buy you out of it in a way, they kind of stop you kind of working in a way, because they buy up all your services, And
absolutely, that's the industry, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It just clogs the arteries, as it were.
Basically, yeah, and so you end up having to do the deal anyway. You just end up doing it cheaper than what you'd initially have done. But we had an amazing time. We achieved some amazing things, and we had a fantastic time, met some great, wonderful people, and did some interesting shit, We really, really did, and I think in a way, in terms of independence and that kind of setting a model for people to follow, I feel that we did well, I teach a lot of students now, and I've given a lot of advice to musicians and bands over the years, and I kind of always say to them, that the blueprint in terms of what independence is was created in the 80s, not just by us, but by Tony Wilson, by all the, like Alan McGee, by all the different kind of record labels, and it was politicized in a way, and so I don't see, when I'm talking to kids now who are saying they're indie in the music, I don't see as me being in their house. They're in ours, and while you're in our house, you'll behave. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's kind of how we view it, as like, we're not visiting your thing, mate. You know what I mean? You're in our house, because we've been doing this a long time. And everything we've been doing over the last year or the last couple of years, has been purely independent. It's purely at our own pace, under our own steam, under our own finances. And we're very fortunate at the moment that kind of changed, because Modern Sky have just come in and picked up what we're doing, and want to work with us, and that's been a wonderful thing, because everyone's worked really hard. It's still amazing to be able to work with Peter, Steve, Carl, and Roy. And they're so talented as people. And it's just and also to kind of work with Dave Picciolinghi. It's like coming full circle, because when we set up Produce Records, it was Dave that worked with us when we set up Produce in those early days.
I've got so many Produce Records back in the day, loads, yeah.
It's like coming, it's going full circle for all of us, and the only reason we're in this position, really, and we're there, really, is because, as Dave said, he thinks the songs are great,
So tell me about, you've got this fame, you've got the success and all that. What about the toll? Everybody sees all the toll it takes on you. Everybody sees glamour and all that. But surely there must have been a downside to it as well.
There is, yeah, there is. There's a lot of things that you kind of wish you'd known. No one teaches you about the industry, or they do now. You can go to university and learn about it. That's what I do. But back in the day, there was no book you could read. There wasn't the internet. Do you know what I mean? There was no way you could necessarily go to learn about this stuff. So you kind of had to learn from different people. You had to kind of pick things up. You had to speak to people. You learn by doing it, and that's how we learn. And you make mistakes as well by doing it that way. Some big mistakes, and some not so big. But the toll it takes on emotionally and work-wise is, we probably enjoyed ourselves a little bit too much at times, and I'm probably guilty of that. It kind of, there's probably times in my life when I've behaved in a way that I'd probably not look back now and wish I hadn't. Do you know what I mean? That, probably have let things take over me in a way that I shouldn't have, But I just think that's a natural consequence of being in the predicament that you're in. You go for absolutely nothing. You're not being necessarily advised properly. Not that you will have taken that advice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's there to be offered, isn't it?
Yeah. There's no one there telling you not to do shit. You know what I mean? And you just think, and then everyone there, especially when you go tour in America and you go round and round America, and everyone there's just telling you how amazing you are all day. You know what I mean? And just, it's that kind of, it makes you very uncertain, I suppose, and it kind of puts you in a very, it's very much not in a real world. So the fame thing, I don't think I dealt with the fame thing particularly well. I don't think anyone's really totally comfortable with the fame thing, in the farm. It's not something we were comfortable with. And I don't think I dealt with it particularly well, especially with all of the issues that was earlier on when we were discussing stuff. So there is a downside to it. It's the mental pressure that it puts on you. It's the situations that it puts you in that you're not necessarily used to. It's the workload that you have to do. You have to constantly be switched on. Yes. And that's really, really hard. I found it so hard to switch off mentally.
Did you struggle with your mental health?
No, I don't. I've never necessarily gone through a doctor or anything like that saying I struggle with my mental health. There's been times in my life where I've felt down, absolutely. There's been times when I've been, not in the best place. Yeah, absolutely, and there's normally reasons for that, But I just think there's times when you have to kind of. I come from that growing up in that background where you don't share those things with people.
I know that's why we're talking now, you know.
And you don't share that stuff with people. It's
Tell
not
me,
something.
why do you think that is?
I was always told that, you know, you keep you don't wash your dirty linen in public.
Yeah.
Always that ran into me. Don't ever let them see any weaknesses. That's what I was
Weakness, yes.
brought up with. Don't ever let anyone see any weaknesses. So you don't. So you learn to just keep it in. And I'm not saying that it's seen as a weakness. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
because people can be cruel. You know what I mean? And people will, you know. So I was always you've got to put on some form of front in some kind of, well, no matter, you always smile no matter how bad you're feeling, you know. And I've always kind of done that, really, you know. And so I don't necessarily think I've had any major issues, but there's definitely been times in my life where I've not felt right, you know, I've not felt myself, you know.
Okay, fast forward to now then, in this current climate, etc. If you were struggling with your mental health, would you reach out?
Absolutely, I would. Yeah, that would be the first thing I'd do. I would speak to someone. As much as how hard it might feel to me to do that, I would have to. Yeah, I would absolutely do that. And I have good people around me. You know, I have. You know, I've got a band who, you know, I've been through a lot over the last few years with the cancer and with, you know, various other illnesses and stuff. You know, I've had throat cancer. You know, and they've been so supportive. You know, of me, and I love them for that. You know, and so, yeah, I mean, I've got people I can speak to if I ever needed that. And I've got a wife who listens. I've got a sister who listens, you know. So if I ever need to speak to anyone, I've got people around me who I know I can go and speak to. Do you know what I mean?
I'm smiling then because you mentioned about the throat cancer, and I wasn't aware of that, you know, but you spoke about that network of support around you, including the band members, and you saying now, I've loved them for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is not something perhaps 20, 30, you're smiling now, 30 years ago you would have said.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we all give each other a hug, you know what I mean? Which is probably back in the 80s we'd never have done.
Okay, how did that feel now?
It feels good, yeah. We all love each other because it is the farm. It's like that last gang in town, you know. We are Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids, you know what I mean? And we are, you know, we are, you know, we are the last gang in town, you know what I mean? It's in terms of bands, in terms of being together, and the life we've spent together, and the things that we've done together, the ups and downs, you know, and there's we don't all see eye to eye on stuff, but we'll all defend each other to the hill, you know what I mean? And we're all loyal to each other.
I think it's funny you should say that. I've always said about Scousers, you know, there may be rivalries within the city in that, but if you take Scousers down south, it doesn't matter what factions, they would always come together against. Yeah, always. Did you ever see yourselves, the farmers, as part of that rivalry, just what was going on in Manchester?
No, we were always only from a friendly point of view. I mean, we were part of the music scene. We were part of was part of a music scene that was obviously at the time known for coming out of Manchester and London and Scotland. So we were saw them as comrades in what we did. You know, we were friends with the Happy Mondays and all of those people. You know, the first gig the Happy Mondays did in Liverpool with the farm at the Picket.
I remember, yeah.
That was the first gig they ever did in Liverpool, was with us, and we played over in Manchester, and they would come and see us. You know, so you know, Sean Ryder recently admitted in an interview that, you know, that when they saw the farm on the Oxford Road show, they watched us on the Oxford Road show, and they were like, "Fucking hell, you can be in a band and look like us." You know what I mean? And he admitted that recently in an interview. So, you know, they were aware of us and we were aware of them. And we kind of naturally, because of the culture we come from, got to know each other. And we were best of mates. We're really good friends with them, you know. I'm not saying we're best of mates with all of them, but I get on really well with Sean. I get on with Bez. I get on with, you know, Gary and, you know, all of them, you know. You know, Ruetta's lovely, you know. So, and it's the same with all the London fraternity that we knew. So we were kind of part of a music scene that was national.
Yes.
It was a national music scene, and so those barriers had, because it was that part of the acid house culture, those barriers had already been broken down, you know. So if there was rivalry, it was a friendly rivalry, you know.
Yeah.
Kinky Afro was originally named Groovy Afro.
Okay.
And they saw Groovy Train come out, not to change the name.
Interesting. You heard it here. Okay.
That's another thing people don't know.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. So, what's next for you in the band? You said you tour and you're halfway through touring this, well, the festival season now.
Yeah, we're halfway through in the festival season, and we got a gig with Salt and Tar with Red Run Club, with special guests of Red Run Club. And we've got a few more gigs and things that we need to announce. We've just signed a record deal with, just in case I haven't said it, we've just signed that with Modern Sky, and we've got an album coming out in next year, in 2025. We've probably got 2 more singles coming out before then, and then we're already kind of booking in various gigs and various stuff for next year, which will be getting announced towards the end of the year. So we've probably got quite a lot on over the next couple of years, you know, which is great, you know, which is great.
Yeah. So is that just touring? Will you go to the States? Will you go across Europe, the UK, or will you go further afield?
No idea at this point, to be perfectly honest with the tour, but we'd love to go, you know, obviously we'd love to play certain places in Europe, you know, we have done in the past. I think that will depend upon how well the album does, you know, and how well that type of thing does. If there's I'm sure if there's an offer coming, we would sit down and consider it. But it would normally be at a time when it's appropriate, because, you know, the thing is, with the fan, we're all prepared to put the work in, but as I say, everyone's got their own thing going on, you know. So
Absolutely. I don't know if you've got any kids or not.
Yeah, they're all grown up now, you know.
Okay.
And they're always on to me saying, you want guest lists, you know, and shit like that, you know. So.
Oh, of course. When was the last time you told them that you loved them?
Probably last time I spoke to him. I tell my daughter I love her all the time. I tell my son I love him. Probably not as much as I should.
Okay.
I do that. Yeah, I do that. You know, kind of make sure I do that. You know.
If I was to ask you now, who's the most important person in your life? You can only pick one person.
Oh, God.
Yes, oh, God.
I've got to be really careful what I say here.
You don't.
I suppose it'd have to be my wife.
Your wife?
Yeah, okay. Right now.
If I said you were wrong, if I said it's you.
Right, yeah.
How would you respond?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but yeah, I think I'm hard to live with, you know, and even for my kids. I imagine it hasn't been easy for them, you know, because I'm not, I suppose as kind of, how can I explain it? It's, I love them and I'm loving them, but, you know, because of the nature of the career and I've never always been there, you know what I mean? I regret that to some extent, and you know, I suppose, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm probably the most important thing, but I value my family and the people around me so much more. You know, I you know, in terms of, you know, I'd be nothing without them, really.
Wow, I doubt that very much. I hear what you're saying there. I do hear what you're saying there. You stayed true to your working class values. You stayed true to you.
I'd like to think so.
How has the family been with regards to the success of yourself, the success of the farm and that? How was your mum and dad towards that?
Oh, my mum was made up, you know, my mum was absolutely over the moon, you know, she was like really, really proud of me, you know, because it was like, you know, my dad was as well. They were kind of really proud of what they'd done, because it was a significant achievement, considering, you know, they're growing up in Kirkdale and then, you know, in the Boot area, and my dad's, you know, family are from Scotland Road, you know, they're all growing up in those tough fucking areas where, you know, what's expected of you is to become a builder or to work in a factory or to work in this, nothing like what I've ended up doing is expected of you. I'm the first person in our family, our immediate family, to get a master's, you know, degree. I'm the first person probably that's going to do a PhD, you know, and other than my my brother's kids who were really well educated, who were doing masters and PhDs and all that. But in terms of that, I was the first person in the immediate family of my brother's sisters, cousins, and all that to be educated in that way. So for me to do and be in a band and do what I'm doing, my mother and both my father, they were extremely proud, of me, and I value that.
Are you proud of what you've achieved?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I feel, I look back and think about the journey, and the journey is really the important bit, and what took place on that journey, and the things that I never imagined would transpiring in the way that they did. Coupled with a lot of failures, you feel nothing other than, well, actually, I did all right. You know what I mean? It's not an arrogant thing or anything like that. You just sit there and think, you've done all right there, lad. Do you know what I mean? Good.
Good. Okay. Any questions to ask me?
Oh, I think, and I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed this podcast and talking. It's been really interesting. I thought the questions were really, really good, really interesting. You know what I mean? And what's next for you in the Hate Locker?
What's next? Well, one of the things. I mean, we're gonna look more. We're gonna do a little program about suicide.
Okay.
We're gonna really not touch on it, explore it in depth with a few researchers that we've got from Glasgow University to explore that.
Okay.
And no doubt, Susan Bennett, PhD. Yeah. And no doubt, I was thinking given the nature of the work, the music industry, you would have come across people that have died by suicide, etc.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, has that ever impacted you?
It has, yeah. It has. It kind of has from various kind of people that you've known, and it's, it's really, really a difficult kind of area to touch upon or even discuss and talk about, because you're always left with those questions on you.
The whys, the what if,
and what if could you have done something yourself? It's a tough one, isn't it?
I think that's something that we at the Hate Locker Pod don't want to shy away from.
Yeah,
because I think it
absolutely needs discussing. Because you kind of have to think of what position someone must be in to, the despair that someone must feel to feel that there's no other option and there's no other way out other than that, and it's I know that's tough, that's really tough, and that's really tough for anyone, I suppose, that's close to anyone that's happened, that has lost someone in that way, because they're kind of left feeling that, really, and they're left not just hurt that they've gone, but what did I miss? I mean, is there anything I could have done?
Do you have any regrets in that instance?
Not really. No. I don't mean to be flippant about that, but I suppose, like anything, I just suppose that's probably, I don't know, with the background that we've come, there's probably very little that you could have done with certain people I've known.
I'm always keen to ask our guests. We've got a situation whereby men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide.
Yeah.
And that's the high risk group, 45 to 59 for men. Why do you think that is?
Conditioning. I do think conditioning has a certain amount to do with it. And what I mean by that, it's how you're conditioned as a man to be a man for all your life, which you're not supposed to share things. There has to be a significant part of it, because otherwise the men would be talking up and speaking, and they're not. And they're not, because you feel inadequate. Do you know what I mean? Having the feelings that you do that, that there has to be some form of conditioning in how we raise our children, and how we raise our what the man's role in society. It's not helped, I suppose, by certain advocates and certain kind of what I would say are probably influencers on social media who have a view and an opinion that men should be men and all that type of thing. And it's a conditioning and how we're brought up and how we're taught to be men and how we're not. The expectations of men, deep rooted. The deep rooted, and not, it's easy for people as well. I mean, to kind of say that men shouldn't be the way that they are, but they're deep rooted. They're really, really rooted in the expectation, I suppose, that's placed upon you. It's as I kind of alluded to you earlier, it's seen as weakness to share these things.
Did that have an impact on the way that you raised your children, particularly your lad, in terms of being okay with his emotions, in terms of being able to say to him, it's okay to cry, in terms of not saying to him, shut up, lads don't cry, this, that and the other?
I've never used that type of thing with my children. I've never used that language, really. I've never kind of gone there with that type of thing. So I kind of take a very, very, very different approach even now when I speak to them. So they're quite open.
Keith Mullin, thank you for sharing what's in your hurt locker.
Listen, Yinka, thank you very much for having me on. I've really appreciated it, and it's been interesting talking to you.
Thank you. It's been interesting talking to you too. Did you find it okay? Were we gentle enough with you?
You were gentle, yeah. You were fine. Thoroughly enjoyable, and I'll highly be recommending it to everyone.
Thank you. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, no worries.
The Hurt Locker is a safe space for our guests to openly share their mental health experiences. If you have been affected by any of the content in this recording, then please reach out for support. If it is an emergency, dial 999. If you would like to talk to somebody today, then please call the Samaritans on 116 123. Stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Hurt Locker. Please give us a rating or share with another listener. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Hurt Locker Pod.